Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the DMsGuild and tabletop RPG space. And this week I'm joined by, again, inarguably, the legendary Oliver Darkshire.
On my good side already.
Yeah, like it's the buttering the bread. You know, you got
flattery works. Just keep that
up. Hello, how are we doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, I think I'm okay. I mean, I'm about a year into being in a box at this point, so doing pretty well considering.
Yeah, big mood. Yeah, I think the year milestone for me was a bit like, oh, okay, so that's where the last few months has gone. It hasn't just been like a haze dream.
Oh, okay, that happened.
But no, so I guess diving straight into the questions then and stuff like that, for the people listening, if for whatever reason they haven't heard of you, what sort of things are you known for?
Oh gosh, I've butchered a whole load of such stuff over the years. I started off with kind of Ravenloft content, so horror content, and Curse of Strahd, that kind of stuff, thinking it was a safe place to dip my toe in the waters, and then I discovered that it's just all awful. It's just horrible. It's just full of this nonsense. So then I moved out of that into kind of comedy stuff, into kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff, and then I've done a lot of gay content recently because I figured that life is very, very short. The world's ending, so and there's no time.
That feels like a good sort of progression of
downhill into nudity.
So then, I guess, what was your first product? What was the first thing? So you kind of said you tested the waters with Ravenloft, but
yeah, actually, the first thing that I really put any time into was called Mother Haggle's Notice Board, which is really silly. It's about adventurers who go and get tasked on a witch, and tasked are really simple to kill some. So she'll say, "Oh, gee, adventurers, aren't I vulnerable old lady in the forest? Why don't you go and bet my ring down the well?" And they go down the well and they die of starvation. Things can't wake up again. Which I found really amusing at the time, and I continue to find really amusing. I wheel it out whenever I've got a group that I don't like very
much. Just throw them down the well.
Just throw them down the well. I'm surprised when people can't get back up the well again. Did you bring climbing gear? No. Well, I guess rolling you, elf.
So it's just, yeah, no, in fairness, yeah, it's rare to think that, you know, the most highest challenge that a group of adventurers could to face is a slippery well.
Oh, you'll be surprised. Yeah, there's a whole lot. I had a whole list of horrible tasks that were really mundane that I found greatly amusing at the time. I still indulge myself in it occasionally.
So then, I guess I kind of have to ask then. So why? I guess what was the original like calling towards like Ravenloft in particular?
I mean, it's one of the better, honestly, I mean, even with all its problems, it's one of the better modules they've released. Now, it's one of the best villains. It's one of the easiest to sell things for. Not gonna lie, people have, I don't know, people are still constantly theory crafting about it, like 5 years after it's released. Like, people handcraft that bloody adventure for reasons I will never understand. So it's one of those things where, you know, you can release content for it, people will buy it, whereas the other hardcovers, they kind of come and go. But it just seemed like a good place to jump in. And also, it's got pretty easily accessible themes. Everyone knows what's expected in a vampire story, right?
Yeah.
I'm an evil vampire, and I'm on a hill, and I eat women. And it's like, okay, well, you know, the rest kind of falls naturally out from there. And they add on content. It's quite easy to just patch on.
Yeah, I guess as well as it is kind of compared to all the other hardcovers set within like the Sword Coast and the Forgotten Realms, it is distinct and in how it kind of stand alone.
Its own story thing, really. So that was all kind of, they've got this kind of narrative progression with all kind of be networked into Forgotten Realms, whereas, you know, it kind of just sits on its own. You can play it from 1 to 10, then, you know, you need something else to do, right? So
I thought, I guess, like, because it kind of continued, because you kind of went on to do, how many Ravenloft Gazetteers have you done?
Too many. Arguably too many. I might say far too many. A lot. I don't even know. I don't even look at it anymore because it made me lose the will to live. Quite a lot. I've still got 1 or 2 that I'm waiting to release because they're doing the Ravenloft book soon. I thought that's just money.
Yeah.
Waiting to happen. So I'm still sitting on 1 or 2 of them. When I figured out they were going to do Ravenloft book, which was like 2 years ago, whatever, I just saw the rumblings in the interior. I stopped producing as many because I was like, well, that'll be immediately outdated by all these. So I just kept the ones that I hadn't in progress, so to speak, and waited.
So, well, no, in fact, it's interesting because it's kind of looking at your your whole catalog of kind of products and stuff like that. It feels like you are quite comfortable in just kind of diving into the lore of whatever it is, and then taking and occasionally bending it and stuff like that as you kind of need to.
in the middle, just go at a right angle sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I work in a bookstore, so that's my main vocation really. So I skim read all the time. Like my main job is basically skimming something and thinking what's worth putting on the shelf or not. So as far as law books go, I'm just like scanning that for interesting, and then I pull it out. So D&D law books are nothing.
I do like it. It's like one of the rare cases where your day job actually directly kind of feeds into your, like, I suppose, your writing habits.
Really useful. Not only because I work in a rare bookstore. Most D&D quests, most basic D&D quests involve around. Oh no, the ancient scroll of death. So there's a lot of mileage in that.
Because you've got the verbiage for ancient scroll down to a T.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is off the top of my head.
Just half the job done really already.
So then I guess, like, if we kind of continue through the journey, then what would you say was like the turning point then from, I guess, Ravenloft focus to bringing in that kind of tongue-in-cheek side?
I got really bored about a year in. I was kind of rewriting the endless. I kind of got quite depressed with the fact that whenever you would open a Ravenloft book, it would like lol racism about like 30 words in, or I don't know, there were no gays in there or anything, and it was the same thing over and over again. Just women being tortured over and over again by some kind of, I don't know. It almost felt like the writers were enjoying it a bit too much, and after a while, it's got quite depressing. It was like, well, I have to fix this, I guess, and that, and this, and that, and after a while, it began to feel like a drag. So I really wanted to do something fun, and I think I came out with, it was like Attack of the 50-Foot Bikini Werewolf. I just lost it. I just lost my sanity, I think, and just fell straight into this.
I was saying, was Space Kobolds before that or after that?
It was just after that. I kind of got into my rhythm with the Bikini Kobold, and I was like, well, if I can get away with that, and they won't remove that, then I can pretty much get away with almost anything. So I Killer Kobolds. I found this pack of Kobolds in Roll20, I think it was, and I contacted the artist and said, I want to use your Kobolds, and he's lovely. So he was like, yeah, use my Kobolds. And that really really spiraled from there, honestly.
It's really interesting as well, because I suppose Killer Kobolds is an interesting one, because it's a one shot that provides the sort of what I dare not even call it like a one shot, because it's almost like a separate game.
It's not. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. Really. I think I was in a fugue state for like a week, where this idea came to me and it had to be done. I'm not really sure how it got to the end. I just know that it got there. Because,
like, for the people listening, essentially, it's there is, I think, was it 4 or 5 different kobolds, each with their own sort of like set of skills.
Yeah, alien kobolds. You're a different color kobold. You have a different you have one shtick as your different color kobold. I don't know, you explode or you regenerate or something, and then your task is to go into the village and, I don't know, perpetrate some unnecessary act of alien violence, and then kind of B-movie, kind of D-list horror movie style.
Yeah,
like you'll kill a kobold from outer space, and you're armed with your kobold tech. And the joke is that kobold tech in like classic D&D is like, I don't know, I have an insect on a stick, and if you upgrade that to a science fantasy setting, you've got kobolds with electric spatulas, and I've got dynamite, but I don't know what it does, and it's ticking. And why is it ticking? I will use this to cook, and it's just basically kobolds perpetrating hilarious fancy violence. It's really not.
I mean, in fairness, like, was it? It's that's kind of been happening for it's normally from the DM side of things, having the kobolds go on little antics. It's kind of nice to flip it on its head and let the players have some.
So the players, and I suppose it was a joke about fantasy villager syndrome, where you're just unwinding your own life quite peacefully, farming or whatever, and then a bunch of kobolds crashes in and ruins everything.
Yeah.
And no kobolds probably don't survive because they've got 2 hit points and dynamite. Everyone's unhappy at the end. It's great.
I do like that. I think that the amount of comedy that is like taking that line where you take D&D super seriously, and then you on the end of like how serious, there's the mundane of like people who like they're outside the big cities, they're living out in like a mild peaceful life, and the moment their life contacts these adventurers, it's ruined.
I've always massively enjoyed that kind of dichotomy between the fact that obviously D&D is about these powerful adventurers who want to solve problems, and everyone else is trying to live around them. It's just like, I'm just trying to pick up my dog from the cleaners, and my clothes, and my house has been destroyed twice this week.
Yeah.
Because somebody cast burning hands on it. Like, a first level wizard wandered by with an agenda, and now the entire village is burned down. It's just like
I just want to tell the adventurers that they don't understand how flammable houses are.
Everything's really flammable. Like a 15 sheet. How long a 15-foot cone is? Like, I am 6 foot tall. 15 feet is twice bigger than some of fire.
Yeah.
Like
I've never really thought about that. I've never tried to visualize a 15-foot cone in real life.
They're like, oh, it's a first level spell. It's jank. And I'm like, well, actually, you're going to set fire to like a good few buildings with this and some people. Like it's awful. Think about what these people are capable of. It's like extreme, unnecessary acts of violence. And I know it isn't funny, but also it is kind of funny.
What? Yeah. It's that line, isn't it? You know, comedy and like
so awful that you can't help but laugh at it.
Yeah. Jeez. So then, I guess you kind of mentioned then in kind of the I guess if we were to call it the eras of Oliver Darkshire, we have the Ravenloft, we have the comedy, and then in your own words, we have the I feel bad saying the gay.
We have the gay stuff. Yeah. I really just went off the deep end. And just I just lost all patience.
But was it generally just the impotence in that in everything you've kind of seen? It's just a kind of a lack of representation.
Well, yeah, and when the representation turns up, it tends to be quite muted in that kind of heteronormative kind of, oh, well, if you're not two gays with a picket fence and a kid and a dog called Dog, then, you don't really fit in anyway. So it's kind of the idea that it's okay to put you on our stories as long as you're adopting the masquerade of a heterosexual kind of paradigm for us, then you can be involved. And that really bothers me because that's not my life. That's not life for a lot of people that I know. That's not life for a lot of the queer people that I know. You don't really, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of queer traditions and so on that have developed from not being or feeling included. And to kind of wash those away and put them into it's Derek and his husband on a kobold hunt. And you're like, really, is it? Yeah. And it doesn't always feel very representative. It does for some people who want to be included and enjoy Derek and his husband on the kobold hunt. Yeah. But it's not just about that. Representation goes a little further than that. So yeah, it's kind of what I wanted to see was something a bit more experimental and a bit more pushing the envelope a little more. Yeah. Which arguably did not go down well, but it's kind of what I want to see. Yeah. However upset people may get about it, it's kind of what I wanted to see, and it's kind of something that I wanted when I started running D&D. It's kind of it wasn't there. Yeah.
I suppose that was the age-old thing of, if you're passionate about something that you're doing, that kind of rubs off in the product itself.
Well, I hope so. And I don't think everyone can be everything to everyone. Yeah. But when I say, it's gay content, it's not going to be for all gay people because they're not on Monolith, right? Yeah. And the same way that, any content for anyone, it's just gay content. That's what it is. It's not for all the gays. It's just some of the gays. It reflects my experiences, and that's it, really.
I think that's another thing as well. It's like when it comes to things you're talking about, I want to make something representative. It's like this. It's always going to be represented within this context. It's like you can't. It's no brush is broad enough to get everyone.
It is what it is. I've come to accept that over the years. You kind of you try at first really hard to try and make sure that everyone feels massive, everyone feels included, and nobody feels left out at all. And it's a losing game because, of course, I'm not going to be able to represent. I'm going to be representing a very small group of people. When it comes to the intersect of who I am, my identity is, I represent a very small group of people. I can broaden that out slightly, But as far as the Venn diagram of who I am, is involved, I represent a very small. Everyone represents a very small group of people in a lot of ways, and it's you have to write what you want to write and hope that some people identify with it in some ways, and that's the end of it, I suppose. Which is why it's important that you have all the small different stripes involved, because then everyone writes for themselves, and hopefully then everyone is at least slightly represented.
Yeah, like I said, you cover a wider range, and that's ultimately that's kind of the best that you can kind of do. I can probably crowbar a few more kind ofs in there somewhere. But then, so I guess to kind of broaden it out, then to kind of talk about your, I guess, kind of creative process as a whole, you have mentioned the term, I must have been in like a creative haze, or it was a blur. Is that kind of the?
My husband's very patient, as I will say on this. I have an idea. Usually, I'll be like, I'm not writing anymore. It's horrible. I hate it. Everyone is bastard. Am I allowed to swear? I'm sorry. Everyone is bastard.
And
I think I'm not gonna write any more things. I'm done with it. It's so stressful. I took a week out of my life. Where was I? And then I'll sit down and think I have a great idea. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's the best idea anyone's ever had since sandwiches. And I will basically sit down and I'll basically be gone for like 2 weeks. Whilst I figure this out, I usually start with grabbing the images that I'll need because that's the hardest part. And then kind of working it into a rough layout and then writing afterwards, which I'm given to understand is not the way it's done.
Because actually that's something interesting, because one thing I really wanted to talk about is your Book of Bad Magic series or Book of Weird Magic, your I guess layout style is so distinct And what I've always really kind of particularly like is how looking at things even like stat blocks, you're not afraid to kind of, take and tweak the existing format that everyone goes, oh, it always has to be like this. And you're just like, well, for readability's sake.
I just do whatever works for me. If I can't read it, then it's no use to me as a tool. And down tradition, if it doesn't work, then if I can't use it, then it's no good to anyone really. Because if I can't read it, then nobody else stands a hell of a chance, right? Yeah. But basically, I just alter the format until it works for me. That took, honestly, it's taken a few years to get to the point where I've like got this down and can do it easily. But all those ridiculous InDesign and publishing those nonsense tools and none of the buttons mean anything that's supposed to mean. But yeah, I kind of worked it out so that it works for me, and then hopefully it works for everyone else that's not chunked. Like I don't all those the fonts that everyone uses and all stuff. I find them really hard to use. So I basically started changing them out quite early on. I used to mimic it originally, but I changed it stuff that I could actually translate. Yeah. That seems to be working.
Nice. Well, it kind of pays off. And again, so I don't want to lose the kind of interesting part about that of like starting with the images as well. So
yeah,
is it the case of like, is it straight out and kind of commissioning a good number of pieces, or is it just kind of stock art?
Depends where I get the idea from. So sometimes I find the idea literally from the images. So I'll be scooting around, and part of, I don't know, one thing I'm very good at is sourcing artists and getting images from them. And sometimes I'll chance across something and I'll be like, yeah, art. And then the product will evolve from that. And sometimes I have the idea, but the first thing is almost always the art, because it's the hardest thing to find. Yeah. And stock art is really limited, and everyone's used all the same stock art now. So you have to be kind of aggressive in finding where to find it and how to commission it. And commissioning art's really expensive too. Yeah. So you have to selectively commission art, something you can't find anywhere else. If I need a mind player in a chef's hat, I'm not finding it anywhere else. I have to commission it. But I might be able to find somebody who's already done kobolds or goblins. Like they're everywhere. So I can just find somebody who's already done them and pay them much, much less to use it. So that's all done first, like before I even get out of the gate.
I suppose it is a case of like, if that kind of art exists out there. And there are, again, numerous artists who kind of have stuff all on their portfolio who I'm sure I'll be more than happy at the chance to kind of have their art.
Oh, it's free money for them usually. I've already done the piece. You're paying me for one use in a product that probably no one will ever see. Like it's free money for them. They've already made it. Yeah. So most of the time, people are kind of receptive to the idea that look, I just want to pay you to use it this one time, or whatever. And it works.
So I guess I have a curious question about when it comes to like, okay, so say take the illithid in a chef's hat. I imagine when it comes to actually commissioning like a piece of art, is writing those descriptions a favorite part of yours?
What, as in for the brief for the artist? Or
it's like essentially that's a much more professional term than me just going the words. The words you give.
Yeah, I've picked up a few over time. Some very terse artists. I tend to you can kind of tell usually when you commission an artist, not everyone's going to get along with everyone, whether you're on a level or not, usually before you even start talking about anything. And mostly, a lot of the time I give people one line, and then I let them run with it, because I feel like if you're gonna, much like me, I prefer not to be. If someone gives me a writing brief, I like to have some freedom within it to express myself, and I figure the artist does too, and that tends to work. So I usually give them a line and say, "Look, I need a mind player and a chef's hat, and he's angry," and they'll be like, "Yeah, great," or "It's not enough."
Yeah, fair. I suppose it's all about working to the artist's kind of strengths or what have you.
Yeah, sort of. I sometimes ask what it is how they would rather do it, because Lord knows if you try and police it too much, everyone, as you say, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and they'll know what they are. Yeah. So I don't need to know what they are. So
then I guess with the kind of because going through and kind of visually mapping out the layout of a product per se, does that kind of mean you kind of occasionally run into hurdles further down the line of like, oh, I want to write more, but I can't fit it within the chunk, or does that actually make you be more selective about what you write?
Well, it kind of evolves. But what I do first is I kind of work out the aesthetic of it. So I work out all the fonts and stuff I'm going to use, and I work out all the headers and set it all up. And once I've done that, it's actually pretty easy. I can extend it by adding a page in whenever I want. I sort of don't map it out page by page necessarily, but I find all the images, I set out the document, how it's roughly going to look. Yeah. And all I have to do is basically fill out know roughly what's going to be in each chapter, and then just fill it out. It evolves.
It makes it sound easy.
Doesn't it? No. And you're right. Occasionally, run stuff down the line. We're like, oh, I wish I'd moved that around, but you just move the page around. So
Yeah, no, it's interesting just because, yeah, I mean, vice versa is the other thing of like if you write it in any other way of just like you write everything and then try and go through the process of layout from scratch. There is always that case of like there's always a case where there's like a paragraph or a sentence or two that just doesn't quite fit, and you're just like,
whereas this way, kind of the problem I run into actually, come to think of it, is editing.
oh,
I'm really bad at editing and I hate it. I never pay for it to be done because I don't give a crap. And honestly, most of the time nobody notices. If they do, I ignore them. And life is great. So I've come to understand that maybe I don't actually need it that much. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that I'm one person doing like 5 different jobs here, and editing is not going to be one of them. The product is what it is. It stands on its own 2 feet. If you give me Wizard's budget, then I'll hire a goddamn editor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's always that case of like, you know, I suppose I can't argue. I just
First draft, get some tweaks, goes on the paper, done.
I must admit, I guess it must be kind of liberating because I guess like universally, like in chatting to like all the people I've spoken to, the thing that kind of has come up is like they always occasionally dread the kind of responding to edits.
Yeah, honestly, I know it's not pleasant. I mean, mostly I find it's not that I even mind editors that much. I know I happily tweak things, and often I make a lot of grammatical mistakes. You know, no person's perfect. I make a lot of mistakes and stuff. People always point them out for me. It's liberating. It's kind of I just don't. The time bothers me. Like the time it takes to go to the editor and back. I want to move on to a new project. Mm-hmm. And I really resent. I already wait quite a long time for art usually if I'm commissioning it because that does actually take quite a long time. And to wait another 3 weeks for editing, the necessary time it takes someone to go through and literally point out your mistakes to you. Like I'm waiting a long time for an expensive process that I hate, and I just don't care enough.
No, it's a refreshing attitude, which I'm sure.
I mean, and honestly, I mean, if it were a bigger industry, or if I don't know, more people were seeing it, maybe, or then maybe I'd care slightly more. But I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the people who run this kind of content and buy it kind of understand that it's a one-man shop here, and that like if there's going to be a comma and stat block occasionally, and there's going to be and maybe there's a plot hole in chapter 2, it kind of is.
So I guess I'm curious. So has there been a project that you kind of sought out an editor for in particular, or is it always?
There have been some, and well, some you work if you're working on a collaboration of some kind, there's always someone who's willing to do editing, and that they kind of do it as part of the job.
Yeah.
And there's 1 or 2 projects that I've sought a specific editor for, and I've had 1 or 2 bad experiences. I've been like, you know what, I'm so done with you. Yeah. I had Standing Forlorn, I think was a Ravenloft thing I did a while back, which was quite a long adventure, and I thought this is so long, I have so many plot holes in it that I need someone to look it over. Yeah. So I found someone who seemed quite reasonable. It was only when I got homophobic edits in that I was like, well, I hate you. And
I think that's justified. Yeah.
So I just had like too much stress dealing with like bad ones in the past. I'm just like, I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, I must admit, I think it kind of, I guess, yeah, I think yes, a good chunk of it is always setting expectations, and I'm 9 times out of 10 the times that I've worked with an editor, I enjoy it so much more when it is a dialogue rather than just here's how stupid you are grammatically.
Idiot. Like, as you say, editors come in different like styles and ranks. Same with the writers do and artists do. You ain't got to find one that fits you, I suppose. It is, but you work with some people better than you work with others. I don't think impression is dying out anytime soon.
Dude, I don't know. It sounds like if you have anything to do about it.
Clearly I need them. I'm just really lazy. Yeah. So you have to factor that in.
No, fantastic. So then I guess, I kind of poked at this a little bit earlier when asking about like art briefs then. But do you have like a hands down favorite part of your project? Like from start to finish, is there a part that stands out like, yes?
I like the graphic design, the laying it out. I like making it look pretty, which I'm really bad at this start, and I've got a lot better at. So I like figuring out where everything's going to go, what the chapter's going to look like, and what the structure of the book is going to be. I quite enjoy that, and I enjoy the first drafting process where I'm filling all that out. The longer a project goes on after that, the less interested I get.
Yeah. So it kind of sounds like you're very much like you like establishing the skeleton of a product quite early.
Yeah, pretty much, and what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, what the theme is, that kind of stuff. If it drags on too long, just die inside.
Has there been anything like have you picked up any kind of tips or ways to kind of help you get over those sort of late project like late production speed bumps? I don't know, like existential dread. I don't know what to call
Gosh, you just have to sit down and do it. It's really unpleasant. I just hate it. I'll put it off for weeks. I was looking at the screen like it's a monster. Putting it under a sheet or something, if I never have to see it again. But when it comes down to it, you just have to sit down and give yourself. I mean, I tend to do it all in one go when I'm done. I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll get the script. I'll tinker with it for weeks, and then one day I'll sit down and go, I need to finish this, and I'll spend 3 days just finishing it and then pushing it out there. A lot of people do structured release dates and things, which I can't cope with because it means that I have to plan that when I'm going to finish it. I never know when I'm going to finish it. Yeah. I only know when that mood hits me. I'm like, I have to finish it now.
I can imagine, like, from just hearing you talk, it sounds incredibly liberating, because the amount of times there's been like projects that I finished and there's been just something in production or something going along that has prevented me from just throwing it out there. And I'm mentally done with it. I'm like, I finished. I've written the last word. I'm done. But
I hate it. I've grown to resent my own project. Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure that the more thorough way is the better way of doing things in the long run.
But I mean, again, it's a case of like, I mean, what is it? Writing tabletop RPGs is a creative process and stuff like that, and you can't really infringe on a creative process by saying, "Oh, this is the right, quote unquote, right way" or anything like this. It's like whatever helps you create.
I mean, I think there's been a culture created around the right way of doing things, or around a thorough way of doing things. You write the first draft, and then you get an editor to look at it or whatever, and then you write the second one, and then maybe you get some art done for it, and then you get the editing or whatever, and then you go into layout, and then goes back to the editor, and then you publish it, and you have the release date and interviews and whatever. But I don't have time or patience.
I think another thing as well is I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the nature of like writing on the DMs Guild, but people are vaguely aware of, I suppose, the production process for WotC, and I guess they feel the need to kind of mimic that when some people are you're one person, it's
you've got to do all those jobs by yourself. It's a lot. It is actually a lot. It's like a 70-page document or whatever, something really stupid. I've got myself into that situation before. Then you have to lay out every single one of those, and somebody has to like read the whole thing, and then you have to. It's a lot. Like even writing that stuff is a lot, frankly. To do all those other jobs for basically unpaid. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
it's a bit much, and before pushing out as much stuff as forgive me, that I tend to because I'm awful. Like. I don't have the time. I actually don't have the time to do all those things efficiently or properly even. Everything gets kind of, honestly, I mean, the perfect sometimes enemy of the good. Like, the good is often good enough. Often good enough to get paid at least. And then you've got the experience from the project to add to the next one. And what I've really found is that over time, doing a billion projects in an okay manner has meant that they all become good. They become good over time just because I've had enough practice.
Yeah. I mean, with it, I was about to say, there's an analogy about someone baking, like they're making 100 pots.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna try and say it, but I forgot it, so it would end up being half baked.
I appreciate the pot analogy.
Yeah, there you go. But then, okay, so I guess we've on the other side of the coin. Then, is the least favorite part of your project just finishing it? Then,
I mean. Any attempt at editing is always the worst. I get 3 words in and I'm like, I hate my life, myself. I hate where I am. I hate where I'm going to be. So I don't want to do that. And then, as I say, the actual last push to finish is quite stressful because I know I have to do it or I'll never do it again. I've got some projects which I just didn't get to that point of, and they're just languishing in sarcophagus on my PC somewhere. They will never see the light of day again.
Maybe. Who knows?
It can happen. They're basically undead at this point, if anything.
I must admit that the few times where again I like self-editing and stuff like that, I think I probably have a problem where like I read things in my voice, and I guess the best piece of advice I got, which is to run like anything you write through like a text to speak, but then I struggle to listen to like a robot for that long.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's just whatever way you look at it, it's a lot of work, which is anathema to me. So then, okay, well then, I guess to like looking across everything that you've done, is there like a particular design choice that you've made that like you're particularly proud of? I was always particularly proud of Killer Kobolds in Outer Space because the way it was, the comic book structure made it really easy to do. It was really attractive. It made it really easy to do. It was really simple. It fit the theme. And I had to push it out in like a week or two. Like that project was done.
Wow.
And there was a clever design choice, mostly because they didn't require that much text, and it deceived the viewer in thinking that there was a lot of work gone into it. And actually, when you think about it, it was like 5 lines of text in the whole wretched book. So as a design choice, it actually worked really well because it allowed for that level of parsimony with the.
It sounds like, again, it's the kind of the perfect combination of everything kind of fitting the theme and purpose of
it's a lot of that, and sometimes the design choice doesn't fit the book very well. It actually makes the job harder. And so like finding the right way to lay out the book is really imperative, honestly. And that's why I do it so early on, because I know that if I get it wrong, it's going to make the writing the entire thing a massive struggle.
Ooh. So then I guess if you don't mind me asking then, so what is like a project that you've kind of struggled with the combination of genre and layout?
And I struggled quite early on with a lot of the stuff that sort of I was writing. When you start out, you try and mimic the wizard's trade dress a lot. And I've really struggled with it. All the things that in Mother Haggle stuff that I originally wrote, sort of the first Ravenloft adventures I wrote, I tried to mimic this wizard's layout, which wasn't really working for me because they changed it on a dime, and no one can keep up with that, frankly. And secondly, because it's basically large waters of text which I look at and my eyes blur. So and I can't, I find it really difficult to read, but even more difficult to write, and far more difficult to edit anything. At the time, I was still making vague attempts to. I got over that quickly. So anything that was done sort of in the first year almost, when I was trying to mimic that style, I found I was coming up against a brick wall even trying to do it, because I just kept my eyes were sliding off it every time. It made everything take so much longer. It's just, I hated it.
So actually, one thing I kind of wanted to ask about as well is you do have quite a range of kind of products, from like adventures to sort of NPCs compendiums to like subclasses or just like lore guides. Would you say there is like a particular is it the case of like you just wanted to kind of dip your toes in everything, or is it, which again I should, now that I've said that dipping your toes into everything is probably the poor phrasing for that.
Nah, it's just whatever strikes my fancy at the moment. Honestly, I'll come up with an idea. I'll think this is great. I could do that. I haven't done that before, which is maybe why I've got such a large range of stuff. It's easier not to repeat yourself if you're doing something you haven't done before. And lately, over time, it's progressed largely from this is a cute adventure idea to this is what will sell. Because money's good. Money helps me make more products.
Yeah.
Money funds other hobbies. Money is great. As a secondary job, it's evolved. And as stuff began to sort of sell more in general, I tend to look ahead and think, well, what would actually be useful at the table? What would I want to use?
So, I guess interesting, because I suppose you've gone through that journey, I guess, as like starting to now seeing the impact of some of these products. Would you say it kind of shapes how you pick and choose a product, but would you say it shapes your design in any way?
Come again?
So would you say just through at the point now of what is my question in the best way of asking it possible? I guess compared to your earlier designs, how do you think your newest designs have differed?
Well, I do a lot more. A lot of the early stuff is a lot of fairly wankerous prose. Writers get really self-involved, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a writer. I can write lots of interesting. I'm going to be, I don't know, Shakespeare. I'm going to really get involved in my deep emotional nonsense. There's a lot of adventures. There's a lot of descriptions and a lot of evocative, paragraphs and that kind of stuff. Whereas a lot of the stuff that I do lately, if role tables do not require that, and they're more useful, frankly.
Yeah.
Comedians of items, you can do some sassy flavor text and actually put some useful mechanics in there. If you get NPCs, you basically. So I try and restrict myself more to what is necessary to write to get the book done, as opposed to writing for writing's sake or because I want to impress anyone. It's definitely a more approach. The Infinite Staircase was, which I did quite recently, was basically just a massive book of sort of rollable tables and options, which helped me when I was running a similar campaign. I was like, I need things on the fly that are quick. I don't need 10 paragraphs. I can find the information I need to find it fast. So,
and I suppose it also kind of tick that boxes of kind of extra planar adventures, which it's I don't know what happens, whether you like it or not, and a campaign always ends up in the Feywild at least once.
Always at least once. You can't get away from it. It's terrible. Always without sort of you're trying to avoid it, but no, you just stuck right into it. So there's always some explainer jaunt to some bastard location with fairies in it. So everyone needs it at least one point, right?
I think it's like a DM. It's the sort of it's the equivalent of a sitcom beach episode.
Say beach episode, yes. Great minds. Yeah, basically it's that. Like everyone goes to Feywild once and gets done by fairies, and that's basically the end of it.
Yeah, and then it's always a case of like, even though like in rules is written, it's like, okay, when you come out of the Feywild, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be in a completely different time zone. Everything's fucked. But everyone's like, we just hand wave that. We don't.
It's fine. Just ignore it.
Yeah, just ignore it. Like, everything. You return back to the exact same second you left, and
everything's fine.
Yeah. No, interesting. Yeah, no, I must admit, yeah, I think that it is easier to, again, I guess the thing that I'm coming from is like, I like writing adventures, but I realize as more realistically, like the more useful products are probably just encounters rather than a fully fledged adventure. Just like, because
regrettably, kind of, yeah. And my experience is that adventures they sell, but not nearly as well as anything else.
I guess it's a case of like, again, so if it's it feels almost like if it's a gimmick adventure, whether it's like based on like an actual like, you know, a comedy angle, or if it's something where it's only the one thing about this one specific lore thing. Those are the kind of things you go for. I think, like, again, my best-selling product to date so far is still Vola's Guide to Getting Murdered.
Right? Yeah.
So it's like, do I start a chain? Do I just start killing people off in adventures? Is that
maybe? Why not? I mean, as it grabs the attention, doesn't it? And in a sea of, I mean, the RPG Writers Workshop, for instance, bringing a lot of new people into it, starting them with adventures. When people write stuff, the first thing that you do is usually a dungeon master writing for their group for the first time. The natural gateway into this is writing adventures. And unfortunately, there's one DM to every 5 players. So whatever way you look at it, the market is fairly stacked against adventures. Particularly, as you say, if they sound generic in any way. If I call it, I don't know, the Frozen Compass or the Dark Sword, then chances are it's drowning in a sea of 500 other Dark Swords, no matter how good it is. Whereas Volo's Guide to Getting Murdered, like how many times is someone willing to murder Volo in the alley? We all want to murder Volo, right?
Yeah.
So it's on
I'm always looking for the second excuse. I've done it once. I'll do it again. I guess it's I suppose starting off, you don't necessarily see your product in I guess in the context of the entire like website. You just see it as, this is my adventure, you know. It's
pretty. I worked so hard.
Yeah.
No, there are 10,000 others. All of them.
It's a case of always the child walking up saying, "Mum, look, I did this," and then they just tear it in front.
No more adventures. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So I think it is the kind of I don't want to say natural progression, but it is something to always, you know, be aware of, because I suppose the more you do something and the more you kind of see, you know, a feasibility in this becoming like a second stream of income. I guess having you know usable products or desired products is, well, you know, if the goal is to make money, you have to go where it is, and players tend to spend more than DMs by nature of the fact that there are more of them. And if you're going to be a DM, you want something that I've found that they tend to buy things that they can use easily, which, you know, again, not going to please everyone. Some people would actually prefer the longer form adventures. So, you know, by all means, try them. It's just, as I say, if you're looking for something that's going to make a return on your time.
Yeah. It's that tough one as well, because, like, you know, I suppose that the reason, one way people get around with writing adventures is just kind of making them like tangential to the hardcover books, as kind of like supplements and stuff. And that's one way you kind of get away with, you know, keeping that.
Yeah, which works sort of. I mean, the ones that do really well seem to be the DM's guides to running adventures almost, which again is a lot of busy work, because basically just trying to make an adventure more runnable, but you don't get to flex your creative fingers very much, I imagine. But if you took out what's in the DMsGuild sort of top 20 of like all time, it's like usually monster manuals or harvesting handbooks, or, you know, armorers handbooks, or a lot of item crafting stuff. Now look at it.
Because I suppose it goes back to kind of what you said. It touches that itch of both players and DMs. It's
you know, everyone loves to see it.
Yeah. So then I guess because we've kind of been chatting a little bit about your whole journey as a whole. Is there like a particular lesson that you wish you could have learned maybe a little bit sooner? Or
I wish I just learned to ignore everyone and shut my damn mouth. I'm very bad at that. I've always been really bad at that. I want to sound a viper's tongue, which is absolutely right. The problem is I can't help myself just getting involved and just yelling at people. And actually, a lot of people you kind of have to. It's a very small community, and I offended a lot of people. Like a lot of people that I don't really care about. It'd be nice not to have my back biting me all the time. So yeah, like if honestly, I wish I'd just kept my mouth shut and run the work I wanted to do, because it succeeds anyway. So the best revenge is always having the product in like the visible.
Yeah.
But people have to see it, honestly. I mean, yelling at people is fun temporarily, but honestly, I wish I hadn't spent my time and effort.
I suppose. I don't know. It's like, would you say like? I'm trying to think of like my best way is because it feels like within the DMs Guild space, you are inarguably something of like a celebrity.
You again, factory.
But and with that becomes I suppose the pros and cons of that because of just the nature of having that much attention on you.
Always a lot of opinions. Or whatever it is I'm doing, and the problem, and you get along with some people, you don't get along with other people, and over the last, I'm doing this for 3-4 years, you're going to rub people the wrong way sometimes, and vice versa. And there have been occasions where I was like, maybe I could have just let that go, and then I wouldn't have had to like have it out with them in public, so to speak. I could get on with my life. A lot of energy I wish I just put into actually creating stuff. Like it would have been much more productive.
I don't know what it is about D&D that makes people so opinionated.
Everyone just has a lot of opinions about it, and then you come up against it, and you're like, meh. So yeah.
But no, I think that's fair. And I guess tangentially and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know if right. I'm just kind of curious. When you started writing about like 4 or 5 years ago, like how many followers on Twitter did you have? Would you say?
None. I think I created it when I started.
Wow. So you've literally gone from none to essentially where you are now over the course of.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't have anything when I started. I mean, I'm betting off the first 2 years. I was almost nothing. And then it began to ramp up from there. Like, a lot of stuff I published in the first 2 years, I said, didn't really get any traction at all. It took time, like a weird amount of time.
So I guess how do you? Again, do stop me if this is like too personal or anything. But how do you find navigating like Twitter now? I can't quite fathom it.
Manifestly unpleasant. I'm going to be honest with you. Everyone has an opinion about what it is you should be doing. Everyone has an idea about what it is that you're supposed to be doing and what it is they don't want you to do. And everyone is constantly upset with you about it. And this is nothing. This is like, I'm bearing in mind, on the scale of grand Twitter scale of things, this is 10,000 followers and things. On the grand Twitter scale, on the world scale, this is peanuts. And yet, I find it miserable. Because a lot of the people that I want to interact with, I interact with outside of Twitter anyway, most of the time. And the people that everyone else seems to feel like they have some kind of part ownership for whatever it is I'm doing all the time, and maybe some of them have a point, and a lot of them do not. And either way, it feels it feels much more intrusive now than it did when I started. When I had 300 followers, no one really cared what I was doing. It was great. And now when I put something out, suddenly it's a benchmark of, I don't know, suddenly it is basically the only thing to judge me by that I've ever done. And whatever it is I produce, it's awful. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about it suddenly, and it's always very much easier to internalize the bad stuff than it's the good stuff. Like, I'm very lucky. A lot of people say very nice things about my stuff all the time, and I should appreciate it a lot more than I do. But it's one person says one bad thing, then it kind of sticks with you,
Well, it's also the nature of social media or Twitter itself and stuff like that. It's like, what's it? The negative stuff goes viral far more easier and stuff like that.
So much more easier.
It's people like trash fires or like starting fires.
And I've been guilty of that myself in the past. So it's irony come back to bite me in there. I suppose. I mean, Tish, I suppose. But it's much easier to be negative about something than it is to be positive about something. I get that. As a very negative person, I kind of get that. I'm quite like to be sarcastic about everything. But on Twitter, as I say, it kind of spiraled, doesn't it? There's an element sometimes of wondering whether or not people are genuinely sincere in their criticism, whether or not they just really like the attention, and I get that. I love attention too. So
it's like that again. It's I suppose it's like it's that parasocial relationship where you read someone's individual tweet. That's the only thing you know about this person, and you're just like, I know what you're like in real life. Like I can imagine you sitting in front of your PC. It's always like this. It's always it's never they're never typing. They're hunt and pecking.
Damn bastard. So yeah, it's much more stressful now than it was when I started. Much more stressful. But I've learned lately to just publish the thing and be damned. So
again, it's like it's a story of growth.
One way or the other. Yeah, growing inwards like a hair. So.
I didn't say it was a good growth. I didn't.
Yeah, just strangling out all the other plants.
So I was going to say, I'm going to apologize if my room starts getting dark. Prior to recording this, I realized my bulb went.
Oh, yeah.
And thanks to what was it, the clock's changing? We're just in this weird twilight zone.
I don't know. I don't know what time it is for a year. So it changes nothing to me. I've been in the life.
I don't know what it was. Like, I guess again, this is getting very niche, and it may not affect you unless you're British. But the clock's changing always messes me up. Like, what?
Why do they change? Why do they need to change?
I think it's the farmers. I think it's still their fault. Like, they had their heyday, and it's long gone. I think
they're still torturing us, and I don't understand. Like, what did I do to them? What did I do to the farmers that they need to change my clocks like this?
I get it. Just 1 year, which is 1 year where we don't change the clocks, and I'm sure the farm
time literally like a witch, and I resent.
You know what? Yeah, can you imagine? Like, my mind goes straight to, like, again, to bring it on topic and to bring back thing, like a hag, which is like, as a deal for whatever you want, I'm gonna take an hour of every day of your life.
Forever. Goodbye.
Yeah, just 1 hour throughout the day. It just won't happen for you.
Not happen anymore, and it will be dusk inconveniently early when you're trying to leave a shop or something, and it will depress you because it's not winter yet. Yeah, I'm into that vibe.
Yeah, or you want to go out because it's like, it's only 5 o'clock, but it's dark already.
Dark, you're slightly miserable forever. Ha, fool.
So, thank you for indulging me in that. The brief segue in to bring us kind of back on topic then. Would you say that you kind of, over everything that you've done, you still have like a dream project or something that you kind of want to tick off?
Oh gosh, no, I don't think so. I think I've done everything that I've done everything that I wanted to do a while ago. So at this point, I'm just like, I don't know, running them empty. Projects just come in whenever they come in, and they go whenever they go. And I have these days I've kind of cultivated, our little funds aside to make the next project usually. So whatever it is, I can usually make it if I've got the wherewithal. I'm presuming nothing ever tanks, then I'll be all right. Nice. So it's largely a case of whatever springs to mind. If I had a dream project, done it already.
and then I suppose it's a case of now you kind of, again, in any sort of future projects fuel, like any more current projects fuel future projects, and kind of like keep
I'll wait for them to go with that, and then I'll start putting my mind on something new.
No, fantastic. Yeah, it's a good way to go. And then because we spoke a little bit about Twitter and people and their opinions, but is there anyone in the tabletop community as a whole, or I always say anyone, but any group of people who kind of continually inspires you?
One of the people that I love the most is Uis Abadius, who does he does a lot of the art stuff that I do. I hire him whenever he has space basically on his roster, which let me make you make art. All he does all day is draw sexy dinosaurs, and that is amazing to me.
I was gonna say, I was trying to work, and then sexy dinosaurs, sexy lizards. The timeline and like the image in my head that has been boiled because of some of that.
Beautiful to me. I'm just like, yes, you know what, you're living your truth there, like quite loudly, and you don't apologize to anyone for it. All you do all day is make success out of literally drawing sexy lizards, and I'm so into that. That's just amazing. One of my favorite people, just because just doesn't care about anything other than sexy dinosaurs and occasionally sexy goblins. And I'm like, yeah, you know what?
So would you say, like, in terms of like you kind of mentioned, was it reaching a project or like I was about to say like a hive mind with your artists? Is it the case that the two of you are on a fairly similar wavelength?
On level, yeah. I mentioned the other day, I'm like, I need a commission to close, but I need something. He was like, I'll make time for you. And I'm like, yes, you will, because I need a sexy lizard. It was great. So I've got some of his art on the wall of my house.
Nice.
I love it. There are a few artists that I work with quite regularly, but I just love him. He's great.
So I suppose if anybody's needing, again, it's going to be probably quite niche if people in the audience need lizard art, sexy lizard art, but it's nice to know it's out there.
It's what it is, it's there if you need it.
Yeah. I honestly, it's a case of like, I don't think I need it, but maybe I do. Maybe I've got like a small hole in my life.
Don't put yourself down. Maybe you do need sex lizards. Can improve many lives.
It's like I said, you don't know what you've lost till it's. So
every space in your wall, like what could be there?
Yeah, no, I've got a good amount of space. So you know what? I'm gonna do some soul searching.
With dead up night, just staring at the ceiling. Yeah. What have I done?
Just staring at the blank space, imagining all the different lizard configurations.
It's great.
It's like a Tetris game. And so I guess the kind of the next kind of question then is if you're working, what are you currently working on? What's some of the stuff that are in the works?
Oh gosh, I don't think I can talk about anything that I'm currently working on.
Ooh.
No, I'm taking a break after Queer Code, the last one, the recent one I did. I'm taking a little bit of a break. You know, I'm working on one or two old things that I used put aside a while ago, I suppose. But most of the things I'm actually working on, they're under NDA at the moment. So
wow,
I can't tell you.
No, I mean, again, I don't know what it is. Like most people would think, like when I guess someone says, "Oh, it's under NDA," that oddly just makes me excited. It's always a case of like, oh my, wow, they could, again, because they could be working on anything, and then in the future when it comes out, I'm like, whoa, that's what they were on about.
But yeah, unexcitingly, I don't think anything that I'm currently tinkering with, anything I'll have to talk about. So mystery, deep thickness, I'm afraid.
So, but I guess I guess like with again, so with some of the books and stuff, you have kind of done essentially like continuations of some of your older series. Is there any kind of series of books that you've done that you would like to revisit, even though there may not necessarily be plans for it yet?
I always wanted to go back and read Your Mother Haggle properly. I was one of the first things I did, and they just have such a soft spot in my heart for it. And I laid it out really badly because I was an idiot at the time. I was an idiot, but I was a layout idiot at the time. And so I really wanted to go back and redo that properly. I feel like it deserves a lot more love than I gave it as an idea. I mean, some of the old Ravenlock adventures, like City of Eyes and so on, there were passion projects at the start that I just did when I wasn't expecting to make any money off them, and I felt like they could benefit from a little love. Yeah. After all this time, it can look a bit more.
That's always a tough one because I think I've spoken to a few people about the idea of revisiting old products, and sometimes it's always a case of like is it nice to kind of leave them as like an artifact of like their product of time, or
it's tricky, isn't it? And a lot of ways, they are what they were when I made them. But and a lot of other ways, it would be nice for them to, because a lot of the stuff that I did at the begining, was stuff that I did because I really wanted to do it, as opposed to loads of stuff that I'm doing because I'm a cynical bastard. But some of the other stuff the idea really enthused me. So it would be nice to make them go back and match the vision that I had originally that I just wasn't technically proficient enough to enact at the time.
And I suppose again it is that tough one because to put the suit on, the business mind and everything, it's revamping a product isn't going to suddenly throw it back onto the
money sink. It's a money sink. It's not going to make any money. It's going to lose money, but it might be something that satisfies me aesthetically.
Yeah.
And that is a luxury and a privilege, I suppose, to be able to do that. But after a few years, maybe I've earned it. I don't know.
Yeah, I must admit, I think I'm of the mindset I'm happy to let things sit. And just be, again, even though it's a case of like someone mentions it, I'm like, oh no, don't look at that.
That's the thing that I did.
Yeah. Past Matt was an idiot. He was a fool.
Why? Why did you do this to me?
I've killed that man 100 times. But yeah, and then kind of focus towards the future. But there is always that case of like, sometimes you look at an idea that you're just like, I had the right idea, but I was so misguided.
Yeah, what can you do?
Yeah.
What it is.
But yeah, no. Well, also, no, dude, I'm super excited to kind of hear about. I guess not to hear about some of these future projects. But then I guess the kind of important question is if people kind of want to hear about as and when these come out, where are the best places for them to kind of stay up to date and follow you, I suppose?
If they really insist, they can follow me on Twitter at DeathByBadger, but I suggest you don't, because all I do is whine all day about the trivialities of my pathetic life. So I suggest, just spare yourself your dignity.
I suppose the not following you on Twitter, I suppose just watch the DMsGuild release, like the top 10 thing.
Oh yeah, just do that, because I'm just like up there all the time these days. Like a plague, I refuse to leave. I should replace one thing with another thing at the moment. Much to their aggravation, I'm sure.
I was going to say, there must have been like a point in time where the like Curse of Strahd or the Ravenloft top 10 was pretty much yours.
Well, I mean, when I first started and I was doing a lot of Ravenloft stuff, I wasn't as popular in that respect as I am now, certainly. I mean, I'd be lucky to go something in the top 10 at that point, really. Even in the Ravenloft section, Like, I like to think my work in good quality, but then, I hadn't done a lot of the work of cultivating an audience. It took time. So really, it's the later stuff of this year and the past year, and since, that's really been sticking in the top 10.
I think again you kind of touch off like a really interesting point, because it's easy kind of, I suppose, like again as an outsider looking, you're like, wow, this person's always been nothing but successful and stuff like that. But it's a case of like, you know, you meant 4 years, like it's a big grind. You've been working hard.
Like, and honestly, part of it is just, you know, luck and circumstance, and you know, and all that jazz, and probably a whole host of other confluencing factors, you know, coming into play to my advantage to one extent or another. But I'm fortunate enough to always have another job. This isn't my main job, which means that I've always had spare time spare money, I suppose, to put aside towards projects. That changes things, you know. Now, being white and a man, I get invited into a lot of projects. We realise that I'm massively gay. I'm going to ruin it for them. So you know that opens doors that wouldn't necessarily be open. So I mean, part of it is a grind, part of it is luck and circumstance that have played in my favour. So it's all those things coming to a melting pot of sin.
I suppose it's a case of, well, you know, you stick around long enough, and just like if you stand in your corner, eventually someone's going to look in that general direction. And like, oh, they're still there.
Also make some friends, I guess. Not all of them. Everyone's terrible, but some people aren't. If you have a coven of people,
I like the coven of people.
You know, people you can rely on, and people who you work with regularly, and you know you trust to tell you when, you know, your thing's terrible, and literally working. Then, you know, you can't go too far wrong.
No. Well, again, sorry. Looking at the time, we have quickly managed to kind of natter away an hour. That's become my new favorite thing, to just natter away an hour.
Yeah, I officially stolen this hour from you.
You hacked me. Well, no, again, Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to have this chat. It's been delightful, and yeah, it's an opportunity for me to steal your insights, and the people listening may gain something as well. But
it's been a delight. Thank you.
But yeah, so yeah, no, be sure to follow, you know, at Death by Badger, you know, for the news and rants occasionally. If not, there will be a link to all of Oliver's products and stuff in the description. Otherwise, I've been Matthew Whitby. I don't think I have stuff that I need to promote right now. I think that there may be some Kickstarters next week, but at which point it's probably too late. So I'm just not going to say anything. There may be links in the description for Kickstarters. Maybe check them out. Maybe it's a mystery. But if not, yeah, you can find me at Whitby Writes. And again, my very last question then: how do we end a podcast?
We end it suddenly, and then retreat off social media for like 3 or 4 weeks, so no one knows we've gone.
This may be the rare one that I might not be able to do.
Well, you asked, so
it's true. Okay, well, I've committed. Okay, so following the release of this podcast, I will go on a media silence for 3 hours as a compromise. Bye.
Bye.